Today, we're going to have chats, and we're going to have chats about my 20s. It's really about the moment that I realized that the pain and discomfort of my body, all the things that were manifesting in my body throughout my 20s, were actually my wisdom. They were seeds of wisdom that led me to learning all of the work I've done now and ending up where I am right now. Okay, firstly, let's start with this outfit. So lately I've been embracing things that are a little different to how I've always been in my life. I was never a frilly girl. I never cared much for jewelry. And now this year I suddenly do. And I feel like I've always had jobs where I've had to obey a certain standard when it comes to uniforms and what to wear and practicality of not wearing jewelry when you're a massage therapist, for example. And so now I work for myself and I'm setting up my own empire. I can really express what I would like to express, and I'm getting into more feminine things, and this is still very much in the teething phases, so I don't even know if this matches on a fashion level, but for me this feels good, and that's what I'm going with. So today we're gonna have chats, and we're gonna have chats about my 20s and what had happened throughout my 20s that led me to working the way I do now. It's really about the moment that I realized that the pain and discomfort of my body, all the things that were manifesting in my body throughout my 20s, were actually my wisdom. They were seeds of wisdom that led me to learning all of the work I've done now and ending up where I am right now. I look back at it retrospectively and it's a blessing, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. So around about the age of 21, 22, my first telltale from my physical body and the thing that manifested was this strange lump in my neck. And I haven't really talked to many people about this, but I had a strange lump in my neck. It was manifesting over a period of weeks, and it was getting bigger and it was rubbery, and right now, with the knowledge I have now, I'm oh, that doesn't sound good. But at the time, I didn't know. And it was just kind of growing, and I was on holidays, right? But I was crashing and burning from having 3 jobs, working 7 days a week, and one of the new jobs was quite high stress. I was 21, 22, learning how to lead a group of students while I was teaching them remedial massage and myotherapy, all while trying to figure out how to do that when I was one of the youngest people in the room. How do I have that authority, right? And so that was quite stressful for me, added on top of my 2 other jobs that I had. I'd spend the only day that I technically had off, which was my Sunday, preparing lectures for the next day. And so I had a couple weeks off with my parents. We went on a road trip down to the Great Ocean Road, and all of a sudden this lump appears in my neck, and over the whole 3 weeks it progressed from a tiny lump at the start to a bigger lump by the end. I had a mouthful of ulcers, more than 12, that were not healing. I had random shooting pains down my leg and down my arms at times over those 3 weeks, and I was weirdly breathless even when I was sitting at times. And so I went to the doctor to get a check, and then he wanted to run me across from the GP clinic that I was at, straight across to pathology for a blood test and an ultrasound on the lump. It was a long 48 hours, especially for my mum, who barely slept and ate, but that was the starting point. Luckily, it was just a strange virus, and my doctor ended up saying to me, "You're very lucky, and because of your age, around the age of 21 is one of the highest incident ages, as well as in the teens as well, for leukemia and Hodgkin's lymphoma." So, he was quite worried, my doctor, and he said, "I'm very lucky, I should probably just quit one of my 3 jobs." And so that was the first telltale sign of my body telling me to slow down, to try things a different way. I would say that was a pretty loud knock on the door from my body in retrospect, but at the time it must have felt like a feather tickle, because then I still kept going. I shifted a little bit, but I still kept going. I still kept trying to achieve, and also the control was there. I loved to have control and have lists, and I was hyper obsessed with my calendar. I still like my calendar, and I still like making lists, and I still like planning things out, but there was this hyper control, this added element of fear underneath, and worry and panic. And that still kept going until the next thing happened a couple years later, where my relationships had started to break down and reform, and my mental health became an issue. And then that slowly crept in to the point where I was having panic attacks amidst all the COVID stuff and being at uni. And then my mental body started to break down. And that was so unfamiliar to me, because the last time I remembered having anything that felt like a panic attack was when I was like a little kid. And I didn't know that that's what it was at the time, but it felt exactly the same. And so here I was, you know, hiding in corners when I was a little kid, having panic attacks, not realizing that that's what they were, nurturing my inner child right now. And then having them as an adult, it's so bizarre if you haven't had it your whole life, or you don't really know what you're working with. And that was one of the biggest things. I would say the mental body there is what flipped the switch for me, as well as the combination of everything I'd been learning throughout my 20s in academia, through school. And then from there is where I started to go more into the metaphysical aspects of our body, because it was like that eye-opening moment through the mental body where I was like, oh, there's more to this than just the physical body acting up for whatever reason biologically. There's more going on. The mind has an effect on the body. I'm learning that through chiropractics, and how the nervous system plays one of the biggest roles in our lives when it doesn't just come to our physical body and our homeostasis. So like how we stay in the most optimal performance with our physical body, but also like how that affects our emotions, our chemistry affects our emotions and our mentality as well. And then the energetics, the subtle energetics behind the things we're feeling, and the subtle sensations, you know, when you're in the midst of a panic attack as well, everything's so sensitive, everything's hypersensitive, and then you go through other points where everything's like completely numb and dissociated. And so you become very aware of how the senses of the nervous system in your body are just so attuned to the subtle body of the energy body, the soul, and your emotions and your mental body. And so from there is when I started to take on things like my Reiki training and my somatic embodiment coaching. And I took a pivot from chiropractic school. I was 1 year out from graduating, and it's 5 years, quite intensive 5 years here in Australia. I think it's a bit different in the States. It's like 7 years, and you go through medical school too, so it's even more intensive. Hats off to people who get through those years in any kind of medical or health science, you know, because it's not easy. Any sciencey, medical, it is a challenge, and hats off to everyone who made it. For me, it wasn't because I didn't think I could do it. It's because my body was telling me something was off here. I needed to shift gears, and I had to recalibrate. I had to go back inwards. My body had come knocking loud enough. It had gone from a feather to a brick to a truck. And that was the moment where I started to kind of lose it mentally, and started to seek ways to find that assistance, that mental and emotional support that felt authentic to me. And for me, somatic embodiment was what landed at the time. And since then, I've been doing this work, and I've been loving this work. And it was like kind of trickled into my clinic work, where I do somatic and energetic sessions in clinic. And now it's even gone to the point where I want to take this the next step further and start to share this with people in a way that they can experience it for themselves. They can experience what it is to be fully connected to all four bodies, and have all four bodies communicate with themselves like all four bodies communicate cohesively together, and finding that full body yes. Because a lot of people at the time, when I decided not to go back to chiropractics, couldn't understand it. You know, it's like, you have 1 more year out of 5. You've worked so hard. You've achieved so much. Like, why don't you just graduate? Then you have the certification. You can do what you want with it. But when I took that time to go inwards, to listen to my pain body's wisdom, everything it was shouting at me, that was when I realized that chiropractics wasn't for me. And not because I don't like chiropractors, not because I didn't like the philosophy I was learning. A lot of the things that I learned in chiro, I still teach on a nervous system level and with somatics. It's that my soul, my mind, my heart, my physical body felt more of a full body yes, going in the direction of somatics and energetics. And it was what helped me on my healing journey. And it's what I have now set out to do to help other people with their journey. You know, if they can reconnect to their 4 bodies and find a cohesive yes, they can feel that full body yes within themselves. They can feel healthy in their physical body, clear in their mind, stable within their emotions, and grounded and nurturing of how they take care of their emotions, and deeply, deeply fulfilled within their soul body. And so that's how I came to be. That's how I came to where I am now with Somatic Body and my offerings. And I feel like everyone goes through an awkward journey in their 20s of rediscovering themselves, and sometimes our Saturn return can be a little bit hectic as well, and mine certainly was, especially because it was in the midst of 2020 to 2021. And I'm kind of grateful for that in retrospect. Again, it was uncomfortable at the time, but I wouldn't be where I am now doing what I love, what I've loved the most out of everything so far. So here we are. This is my story of how I came to be, and really this is just a little campfire chat so that you can get to know me a little more if you're curious as to what humble beginnings Somatic Body came from. If you have any more questions or you want to connect, you know where to find me in the information below. And if there's any story of yours that you feel called to sharing, of course, comment below, connect with me. I love hearing people, like-minded people who go through similar experiences, and I always love sharing with the collective, heartfelt moments like these. And that's it.